Lawmakers have renewed calls for D.C. statehood following last week's deadly Capitol riots. Many have questioned the police response when the U.S. Capitol was breached. Under federal law, though, the U.S. president controls the D.C. National Guard, unlike in every other state where governors have the authority. The president also has the power to federalize the D.C. Police Department under the Home Rule Act. And now Congresswoman Eleanor Holmes Norton has reintroduced a bill calling for D.C. statehood. And Congresswoman Norton joins me now. She represents the District of Columbia. Good to have you with us. Congresswoman, before we get into the statehood question, 20,000 National Guard troops are expected to patrol the district for the inauguration. In addition, you're calling on the National Park Service to cancel all public gathering permits and remove new campsites. Do you think that these measures are enough to keep the city safe?
Well, we certainly didn't keep the city safe on January 6th, even though there was plenty of notice from the president of the insurrection he was fomenting. It looks as if the authorities have learned their lessons from the Capitol Police and, for that matter, the dozen or so police who, in one form or fashion, patrol the nation's capital. There was no excuse for us to be caught naked when there was a mob that got all the way inside the Capitol on both the House and the Senate sides.
And there are a lot of questions about how that was able to happen. You're, in fact, calling for a nonpartisan commission to investigate the Capitol riot and as well as President Trump's rhetoric. And you've also reintroduced a bill calling for D.C. statehood. That has been one of the things that we have heard from you year after year. But in this case, do you think that the Capitol riot has exposed more reasons that bolster the cause for D.C. statehood?
I do think so. It matters that the district had no senators and has no senators and has only me on the House side. Now, I don't decry what authority I have on the House side because I have the same authority as other members, except that final vote on the House floor. I chair subcommittees, I can speak on the floor and the rest. Nor do I say that having two senators and voting representatives could have staved off or could have stopped riots. I do say that the district needs to be empowered, fully empowered, the way Maryland and Virginia, for example, our neighboring stations, our neighboring states are empowered. We need to have irrevocable control over things like the National Guard. I've had a bill to give us control of the National Guard. Do note that the president who has control over our National Guard, and he appears to have held back the National Guard, to have kept it from coming in. That's a very good reason why the district ought to have control over its own National Guard, over its own prosecutions. That's all a part of home rule. Actually, I don't even need statehood to get that. I have bills pending, and I think what you saw here in the last few weeks will help me get those bills for more control of the District of Columbia, of the National Guard, of its own police, of prosecutions, even before we become the 51st state.
Well, for people who have never lived in the district, there's a lack of knowledge about just how much being a non-state affects the citizens who actually live in D.C. In fact, the license plates actually say taxation without representation, with yourself excluded. But can you tell our viewers some of the problems that are inherent in being in a non-state?
I think that most of your viewers would be astonished to know that the people I represent pay the highest federal taxes per capita in the United States, but don't have the same rights as other people, have no senators. The House and the Senate can overturn our local laws that keep me very busy trying to keep that from happening. There's a lot of ignorance about about our capital. I think, frankly, I have to do with some of that because I go to the House floor to speak on bills the way everybody else does. What has educated America about our status, interestingly, is in June when we got the D.C. statehood bill passed for the first time in 219 years. That has been the central education omen for breaking through the ignorance of our country about D.C. statehood. You indicated also that I have placed a bill in to establish a national commission on the attacks on the Capitol, and I really ought to say a word about that. We can't take this attack as something that will simply take the shoring up of security. We need to take this attack in exactly the same way we took the 9/11 attack on our country. There's only one difference. The 9/11 attack was from enemies, as it were, from without. The attack on our country on January 6th was an insurrection from within. Both are of equal moment. That's why I believe we need a national commission. A national commission is much better than the kinds of things we're going to be doing and should do in Congress. We're going to be doing hearings on our Oversight and Government Reform Committee and virtually every other committee. But a national commission would have members from both parties, would be above the fray, and would be the kind of final kind of report that this horrific insurrection deserves.
And we have heard some support from your Republican colleagues for that as well. One last question for you, Congresswoman, because we are running out of time. When it comes to the question of D.C. statehood, Republicans call that a power grab because it would add 2 more senators, given the district's voting record. Those would most likely be Democrats. And some have claimed that the plan you support would be unconstitutional. What's your response to this?
On the constitutional question, there is no question, but that the Congress alone, by a vote of the majority, can in fact decide that the District of Columbia can be a state. We've carved out a place for which we call capital, so we leave a central place that is federal. We're talking about the 8 wards, as we call them, the neighborhoods of the District of Columbia. And there's no question that we could do for the District of Columbia what we've done for every state. This has always been a political question. And when you see people opposing D.C. statehood, it is equally political.
All right. Congresswoman Eleanor Holmes Norton, thank you so much for joining us, and we wish you a very safe inauguration.
My pleasure.